The core of the book is it's 100 activities or exercises or you know, procedures, experiences, game like mini games, all around identifying different pieces of your character. The one that I always come to that I think is the one that made me the laugh the most writing it, that was the most fun, playing around in the space, was getting to know your character by figuring out what is in your character's pockets, right? And for each of these activities, there's about like a one paragraph or maybe one, there's a few sentences just explaining why this idea that at times will be quite silly, a la what is in your character's pockets, is an important piece of understanding them as a character. And, for that, using that again, going back to that example, like what you have in your pockets says something about you as a person. It is the tiny details around a person's life that inform who that person is. If I you know Jeff Stormer, am someone who, I'll be 100% real, I have a lot of junk in my pockets on a given day. If you look in my wallet, my wife has described my wallet as a war zone on multiple occasions, because I just, like, as I collect things, I put them in my wallet. I then forget that they're there, and then when I need to, like, pull out my insurance card or something, I'm like, all right, well, there's a fast food gift card with $4 left on it. There's a coupon to a sandwich shop with 7 punches. There's a coupon from the same sandwich shop with 4 punches. I wonder if they'll combine those and give me a free sandwich. And she'll go like, Jeff, why haven't you thrown any of these things away? And I kind of explained, like, I don't know. I figure I figure when I need them, I'll have a thing here. And that that moment, that anecdote, that's a character detail. Like, there is a character. We understand pieces of character by looking at these tiny little details. Even the smallest piece of your character's life, like what they have in their pockets, what is on their person right now, what they felt important enough to carry with them on their day, or what they have forgotten that they have on their person. All of these things tell us who this character is. And so that's my example of the about the exercise portions. Is I present you with an activity. Tell me what is in your character's pockets. Tell me what music your character is listening to at the moment. Tell me who are the people that your character likes, who are your character's friends, who are their enemies, and also just who are the people your character kind of just doesn't like. They've got their, like, nemesis, they've got their big plot driving enemy, but, like, there are people that annoy your character, and sort of taking time at each of these exercises to say, like, this is fun and at times funny and silly and might feel frivolous, but every single one of these steps is telling you a detail about your character that makes them feel more alive, more specific, more kind of lived in. And those are the details that make us alive as people, right? Like, those are the details, those are the things that stand out and that make us, individual. And kind of explaining how each of these exercises relates back into that specificity and sort of brings that character to life in a very real way. This was honestly the outline, not just because the act of writing a book is an exhausting marathon. Who boy. Um, the outline was kind of one of my favorite parts to work on, because really what it was we outlined the book by way of just naming 100 qualities, or 100, like, really it came from, like, the structure of outlining the book was really, I threw 120 or 130 pitches for activities, or like one sentence pitches for, like, character details at a wall, and then I started writing and figured out which ones of them could be expanded into an activity, and then figured out which ones didn't need to go in the book. And so, like, there was something really fun about just, like, sitting back and going, like, what is every tiny little minute detail that I could think about a person? Put it on the page. Favorite food, put it on the page. Favorite drink, put it on the page. What's in their pockets, put it on the page. What's their morning routine, put it on the page. And just, like, writing down all of these individual quality details and then kind of stepping back and going, are these two qualities adequately different? Is favorite food and favorite drink, is that one activity or is that two activities? And can I like is there enough juice is there enough juice in the tank for me to make this two activities? And how would I turn this into a game? How would I make this into play for each of these activities? How do I make building out your morning routine into play? And so getting to imagine that and just sort of like write down a big list and throw ideas at the wall honestly was one of the most fun parts of writing the book. There is an activity in the book that specifically addresses this because there's a philosophy that I ascribe to. A quote by I want to say T.S. Eliot, but it could just but I don't know. I've heard it ascribed to a lot of people, which is talent borrows and genius steals. And for me, like there's a section in the book where I talk about this very openly, which is you've got inspirations, use them. Like the example that I use in the book, at least I think it's in the book. It was in the first draft of the book, and I don't remember if it made the final version of the book, but it's the example that I use all the time, which is again, I'm a professional wrestling guy. I have been a wrestling fan for a long time. One of the most famous wrestlers to ever do it is The Undertaker, and one of the most iconic things The Undertaker has ever done is his mid-match sit up from like he's beaten down, he's on the mat, and then he sits up with his arms at his sides and then looks at the guy, and you're like, oh, he's about to beat that man to death. It's one of the most iconic like visuals in professional wrestling, and he stole it. Like he's been open in interviews about, I watched the movie Halloween, I saw Michael Myers do that on screen. I thought, I can do that. I can do a sit up. I can do a sit up without using my hands. Like I can do that. What if I did that in a wrestling ring? What if I did that in a match? Would it look cool? And he did it. He brought it into his character, which is a spooky Undertaker wizard man. And he was like, what if I did that and I brought it in? I made it part of my character. I made it part of my move set. He integrated it into his fictional character, and it became like one of the most iconic and lasting pieces or visuals of that character. And to me, like that and part of that, I think a key part of that is that, in interviews and conversations, he was also very open about like, oh yeah, that was inspired by Michael Myers and Halloween. Like it was owning your influences, acknowledging your influences, citing your sources, not claiming that you invented something that was inspired by something else, and like knowing being self-reflective enough to examine and like talk about the things that inspire you and recognize like where those things go, and recognizing like what you're pulling and how things can be changed to make it specific to your character. But like my view has always been like, the old adage that there are no new ideas. To me, that is hugely permissive and exciting. Like people always point to that adage as something kind of discouraging, right? Like there's no new ideas, so why make something? And my view is there's no new ideas, so own your inspirations and use those to build something that is uniquely you. You know what I mean? Like I mentioned it in a very real creative way. I mentioned it when we were talking about podcasts. The podcast that I make, Party of One, that's that's one shot with two-player games instead of a full group. Like I'm very open about it, and I've talked to the hosts and creators of One Shot, and I'm like, yeah, like I adapted your format and did something different, and the end result is a vastly different show that is like unique and is a completely different experience. But it started from a place of saying, this is a thing that inspires me. Let me look at what inspires me about it and ask the question, what happens if I change X, Y, and Z, right? Like, I think to me, like, starting from a place of inspiration is an incredibly empowering thing because it's saying, oh, because also there's that self-reflective piece of saying, what inspires me and what does that say not about my character but about me? Because and this is also something that we come back to regularly in the book, this is all fake. Like, you're writing a character like, it's the old professional wrestling adage of like, it's fake, right? Like, to me, like, one of the joys of writing a character, of making a fictional character, is like, it's not real. You have the authorial capability to change things. If something is not working, change it. It also means that, like, at a fundamental level, like, in the way that all fiction writing is self-indulgent, right? If all fiction writing is self-indulgent, then what that means is you're making a thing that is going to make you happy, or creating a character that is going to make you frustrated, or making a character that, like, is appealing in whatever way that is, whether they're a villainous character that makes you specifically mad, or a romantic character that, like, has qualities that would make you swoon. Like, you're writing a character that is speaking to you most specifically, so own the things that you like in other fiction, other stories. And then also, if as you write, we talk a lot about this in the book. One of the big principles of the book is, as you go through exercises, if you find an answer that you don't like, or if down the road you're like, hey, I said this 5 chapters ago and it's no longer working, throw it out. You know? So, like, own your influences, talk about like what you like, and then figure out what is appealing to you, and build the character that speaks to that, and then throw out the pieces that don't. There's an example in the very end of the book, and this was a piece of the writing experience that, like, I took very seriously. The last thing that I wrote for the book was an example character, and I took it very seriously, in that I was like, if I'm going to release this book, you know, when I was talking to the publisher, when I was talking to Adams Media, like, they were very much like, we would like an example of, like, the kind of character that you might create using these exercises. And I was like, okay, cool. If I'm gonna do that, I can't fake it. I have to go through the exercises in this book. I have to grab a bunch of the exercises and, like, flesh them out and follow them step by step, which also in its own way turned into, like, play testing the book, right? Like, it was testing, hey, does this give me fun and interesting answers? And given that I wrote that section the day before the deadline of the book was due, if I came back with no's on those, that was going to be a real problem. Um, but, like, I was like, I have to sit down and I have to, like, actually follow the advice that's in this book. I can't just, like, wing it based on, what I think works. And so I took, I want to say, like, 10 exercises from the book. I followed them step by step. And the last chapter of the book is just, like, a detailed profile of, like, a dwarven journalist named Bothrin, who is, like, a local newspaper writer investigating stories and about, like, the things that they like and the things they don't like, and their friends and their partner and their enemies, and kind of, like, showing my work of, like, this is the character that came out of a lot of these exercises. This is the end result of the processes in the book. And this character was started from zero. Like, I had no idea who this character was, and now I have, 2-3 pages of a really detailed character backstory, and a clear idea of, like, who they like, who they are, what they do, all of these things, because I followed the procedures in the book.